Hey guys, how are you? I hope you're all doing very well. This evening I'm going to be doing a review of a drama from Norway. This is spoken in the Norwegian Swedish language. English subtitles released in the year 1995, directed by Hans Petter Moland, and this film is called Zero Kelvin. So the story to Zero Kelvin is set in the 1920s, and you've got this poet. Now this poet wants to leave his girlfriend for a year just to get away from his busy lifestyle and go to East Greenland, where he's going to become a trapper for a living. So he goes to this very remote cabin located in the Arctic, and this is where he's introduced to the two other characters. You've got Ranbaek, who is a very foul-mouthed, psychopathic individual, and then you've got Jakob, who is a very shy scientist. So immediately Henrik, the main character, and Ranbaek start to have a love-hate relationship. On one day it can be a good relationship, the next day it's really bad. So it's a psychological battleground that this remote cabin has become. And Henrik starts to realise that there's a lot more to Ranbaek than he first thought. And once he breaks down the facade of Ranbaek being this tough guy, he starts to realise that Ranbaek does have a lot of insecurities that Henrik is now playing on. So as the movie goes along, things escalate and things start to get a little bit out of hand as Ranbaek starts to lash out at the people who are questioning his motives and basically what he has become. So that's all I'm going to give you on the synopsis. If you want to know more, please go out there and see this film for yourself. Now my thoughts on Zero Kelvin. This is a beautiful film, but at the same time it's a very cruel film. So I wouldn't actually recommend this film with a clear conscience, because a lot of people are going to hate this film for reasons that I'm going to go into a little bit later. But I thought it's a very psychological film. So if psychological cinema is your type of film, then this one is definitely for you. It's a very good character study. It's a movie about isolation. It's about loneliness. It's about lack of love, and basically how people can become their settings, so to speak. So in here you've got the remote setting of the beautiful Arctic, you've got the harsh reality of what nature can bring, and then you've got the beauty of nature. So, but underneath that beauty there is always the ugliness of mankind. So it actually feels like a contrasting difference between the beauty of nature and the ugliness of man. So Ranbaek is by far the most interesting character, and this is why the film works so well, because Stellan Skarsgård does an unbelievable job portraying an unbelievable character. He's very multi-layered, and he is just really interesting. At the start you feel that he is just a loudmouth, arrogant lunatic, but then as the movie goes along you start to see his insecurities. So Hans Petter Moland, the director, has painted a very real individual, and you can relate to him. Obviously there are parts there you don't relate to, but there are other parts where you feel to yourself, this guy is warm, and that he has all these defences being put up because of his past. I'm not going to go into what happens, but his past dictates the person he is, and that's relevant to today's society. A lot of people will put on this facade and not show their vulnerabilities, and this is exactly what Ranbaek does. But Henrik, he's a very intelligent fellow, and once he starts to realise the vulnerabilities of Ranbaek, he starts to play upon them. So it is definitely a psychological battleground that the movie takes place, and I thought it was just a very good unravelling of some very interesting characters. Jakob, their scientist, he's very quiet, very mysterious, you're not quite sure what he's all about, but everything plays off Ranbaek. Ranbaek is the sole point of the film to me, and for this to work it needed great performances, and I thought all three of the performances were great. Henrik and Jakob were fantastic, but the person who steals the show is Stellan Skarsgård. He's an unbelievable actor, and he demonstrates why he is so good. I thought Ranbaek just had so many layers, and as the movie goes along it's very satisfying, because all their, all the character, the character traits, they're all unraveling, and they basically expose the brittleness of individuals. And no matter how tough you are, you've always got a vulnerability, and that's exactly what the film demonstrates. And so on a psychological front, it's absolutely breathtaking. On a cinematography front, I thought it captured East Greenland perfectly. It's just a very harsh, cold, Arctic conditions. You felt that it was very, claustrophobic inside this cabin. It really symbolised the loneliness that these characters were going through, and you feel that this is the universe for these people, and that they can't just run away and avoid these problems because there's nowhere else to go. So they're forced to confront their problems, and that is what forces them to unravel. And I thought it was just really satisfying the way that Hans Petter Moland did this. I thought the cabin symbolised the mentality of Ranbaek. I thought Ranbaek's mentality, he was very lonely, and he didn't really know what love was, so he was lashing out at everything that was good. And I thought the harsh atmosphere, the harsh cinematography, and the harsh setting symbolised what was going on in Ranbaek's mind. And I thought that was very enthralling and very captivating. I didn't expect that. But what you get is a movie is just not about beautiful scenery, it does show you an underlying sort of ugliness that does symbolize what goes on inside a tortured mind. So I thought that was fantastic. You know, the three leads, it really needed great performances, because if you have a film that is based around a very limited amount of characters, more emphasis is put onto that. And so Hans-Peter Mullen did a great job at casting this, because it really needed great performances, otherwise it would have been very boring. It's a very slow burning film, but I thought it was very eerie. I thought as I said, the beauty of the nature was also the scariness of the nature, because of how little we are and how insignificant we are. And although we have arrogance, we don't realise just how much at the mercy of nature we are at. So I thought that was really breathtaking as well. So there's a lot of conflicting emotions, and for that I thought this was an absolutely fantastic film. Now the reason why I am hesitant to recommend this film is because of the level of brutality. Now this is not brutality inflicted upon human and human. This is brutality inflicted from humans to dogs and, you know, other animals. So if you're an animal lover, be very, very careful of this film, because it is incredibly upsetting. Now the walrus that is shot on a hunt and the rabbits that were shot, I think they were archival footage, so I can overlook that. They weren't killed for the movie. They were very smart in what they did in you know, including archival footage, so it looked like these characters were doing it. But they're not killing the animals for the film like Cannibal Holocaust. I actually thought that's a good way to do it. And you know, if it's archival footage, they're hunting for the sake of food. Whereas in the movie, if they were just shooting the animals for the movie, then I actually think that's just a waste, and I think it's cruel. So on this level, I still think it was okay, and I could overlook that, and that's the reason why I kept watching. But having said that, although it's not made for the film, it's still really hard to watch, especially the rabbits. The amount of pain they're in after they've been shot was just really distressing. And if you think that is the worst of it, wait till you get to the dogs. Now, I love dogs, and this was some of the most unsettling material I've ever come across. Now, I think this was fake. You know, when you actually see the impact on the dogs, you don't get to see it in graphic detail. It's more about what you hear. So I think that might not be real, but it's still incredibly disturbing, because there is one scene in particular involving a rock and a dog, and another one involving a puppy that was just absolutely, I was blown away by that in a really negative way, because on one hand I love what the film was doing, but on the other hand I thought the animal violence prevents you from enjoying it, from really appreciating it, because it just hits you hard. And I thought it did play a purpose to the film, because some films, they just do this for the sake of provoking a response. But in this movie, I thought it showed you how disconnected these people were. That in the city, it's a different lifestyle. You know, in the city, we see dogs and we think to ourselves, you know, just be really nice to them. But in the harsh environment that these people were facing, it's a matter of not seeing animals in a cute way. It's seeing animals in basically a lesser form, and, you know, as food, and not quite, you know, as cuddly as you were in the city lifestyle. So it's contrasting difference between living arrangements and the conditions of living arrangements. And I thought, although I was deeply upset by the animal cruelty in the film, I thought it did have a purpose, so I could overlook that once again. But it's kind of, it has the Martyrs effect at this film. What I mean by that is Martyrs, a French horror film, it's a movie that you can't watch over again very quickly. You have to wait a few months before you see it again. And that's exactly what I felt with Zero Kelvin, down to the fact that it's a very brutal film and a very disturbing film from the violence inflicted upon these you know, helpless creatures. So if you're a fan of, you know, animals and you don't like animal cruelty, stay away from Zero Kelvin. But if you can stomach it, I would still say go and see it, because I actually thought it was a very beautiful film, but at the same time it had that underlying ugliness, that underlying sense of dread, and I thought it worked perfectly. Hans-Peter Mullen has created a fantastic film. I'm not going to give it a perfect score because of the fact it's very upsetting with the animal violence, but it's the closest thing that you would come across. So yet again, another fantastic Norwegian film. It's, you know, a dated sort of film, 1995. You actually get to see that it is a little bit dated, but don't let that put you off, because it just demonstrates that Norwegians know how to make films. So overall, for Zero Kelvin, I'm going to give it 4.5 stars. It's coming highly recommended, and yeah, go out there and see it. But be very careful, as I said, of the animal violence. Alright guys, that's my review. Hope you enjoyed it. Till next time, keep watching movies, and I'll see you later. Bye.